Before I got to Hollywood, I had gone along in the assumption that it was the role of the male to pursue the female. I had my occasional successes and my failures, but from time to time, when the star legend began to surround me, it became different. I discovered that women know far more about seduction than men. At least they know when they want to be seduced, if one can put it that way. Not only did I not have to seduce women, but sometimes I even went so far as to say in advance, I won't put you in a part in my forthcoming picture. Maybe it was the air around Hollywood, the competition among women to get places. It made some of them wild. My pal Bud Ernst annoyed me by scoffing. You never made a dame in your life. You've only had it taken from you. Not only did I never promise any woman marriage in order to take her to bed, as I have heard some true seducers do, but I always prefaced my intentions by announcing that marriage was absurd, ridiculous, fatuous. These warnings to the opposite sex did not seem to have prevented me from becoming conversant with them. A star doesn't have to pursue or seduce any woman. What he needs, more likely, is a chastity belt for self-protection, as some of my movie pals will tell you. Naturally, in an environment like this, I was like the rabbit tossed into the briar patch. Beautiful gals all about. If the female of the species is more beautiful more often than not, or more deadly than, then she helps me to know I am alive. I see and sense the loveliness in ladies, even when it is not always there. A woman who might be only pretty to others might seem to me to be beautiful. This is this is the way I am biologically constructed, slightly blind. In fact, as I look back on my gallery of women, I think it was only Lily who was truly beautiful in the classic sense. I now had Lily right where I wanted her. I was living the life of a married bachelor. I went my own way. I had male pals around me for sports, athletics, gambling, and fun, and starlets for recreation, and the little woman at home. Besides, I now had a new interest, Mulholland House, overlooking the San Fernando Valley. I designed the house myself. I would make of it a playhouse and spot for rest, recreation, good living, romping, roistering, and cultured living too. She went up fast, like the sails of a boat. At the outset, she only cost me $35,000. Later, as I extended her and improved her, the total cost went to $125,000. She snuggled on the side of the hill. Inside, in most of her rooms, there were mirrors that brought the beauty of the valley into the house. The swimming pool was almost in my living room. Outside was a riding ring. Below on the hillside a tennis court, and a little ways off I had stables for cockfights. Of course, cockfighting was against the law, but we had it anyway on Sunday nights. We had exciting Sunday evenings. I and my cowboy friends, the actors who played with me in the westerns, and the Hollywood sports who hung around me. In the barn, you would have the smell of horses, the smell of fighting cocks, and the smell of cowboys all watching those two game birds peck each other to death. Even my horses loved the cockfights. They peered over their bars at the two birds. The interior of the house wasn't ornate, but it was beautiful and practical, and there was plenty of room. Rooms for guests, rooms for fun, rooms for eating, a room for reading, leopard skins on the floor, a Gao Jin, and a Van Gogh on the walls, originals. There were glass cases for firearms. I collected guns, but I hated to use them. I had miniatures of boats in cases, under glass, on the wall, schooners, barkentines. Of course, there was a bar of my own design. Fancy a house in Hollywood without a private bar. On the wall behind it was a very special painting of a Mexican bullfight, but I think I liked my den best of all. Here was my desk, next to a window where the California light streamed in. There I sat often on weekends, when I barred the doors and I wrote or tried to write. Nearby was a fireplace, and wood was on the hearth, and when it was cool the logs burned and the room was aglow. I thought sometimes, how is all this? I'm still in my early 30s, and I'm sitting on top of the world. Here's my home. Out there's the valley. Beyond are the people who are writing me all that fan mail. I wonder how Coates is. Whatever happened to Jack Ryan and Dusty Miller? What strange things can happen to a man, and in so short a time? I had it all figured out, now that the place was built. This was a bachelor house. No woman would live here with me. Not Lily, not anyone else. Sure, I'd have them visit me, but this was for me to roam around in, alone. Outside, rolling away behind the house, was the farm, where there were horses, cows, wallabies, chickens, dogs, cats, everything. Mine. There are some things a man has to have to himself. A busy fellow like Flynn needs some peace sometimes. When I had arrived in England after my 7 seas voyage across the globe, I was surprised to bump into an Australian acquaintance, Freddie McAvoy. I found that in part he complimented me. He was an athlete, a roisterer like myself, and he could be canny too, very. He had his eye out for the main chance and bluntly told me he intended marrying wealthy. With his physique and appearance and his charm and culture, I didn't doubt he could do this. When I left England, he said he'd make his way back to America sooner or later and we'd meet again. He went to New York and set out on a house-to-house job selling the Encyclopedia Britannica. It didn't last long, not for him. He dressed himself up. He got out on a few tennis courts in the swankier parts of Long Island. He met people. He fell in with the society crowd, and he began his career as a sportsman and an international gradabout. He was tall, with blonde hair, thin, aquiline, rather hawk nose. He had a hard, set mouth and chin, and a pair of piercing blue eyes. They called him Tiger, a term that, I think, stemmed from the compelling effect of his eyes. His family was from Victoria. They were ranchers. I didn't see Freddie while I first made pictures and not throughout my 6-year-long relationship with Lily. But soon after Mulholland was built, he returned from Europe, having been pursued there by a fabulously wealthy Standard Oil heiress. I invited him to stay with me. He was a little disconsolate at the time, having had difficulties of a romantic sort. Freddie held the fort all day while I worked at the studio. He brought along with him Alexandre, an ex-Russian royalist manservant who was nuts about betting on horses. Alexandre was given charge of Mulholland. Strange people wended their way up the hill to Mulholland. Among them pimps, sports, bums, down at the heel actors, gamblers, athletes, sightseers, process servers, phonies, queers, salesmen, everything in the world, all kinds and all types, as the Lord or nature composed them, the famous and the infamous. Stars, bit players, stuntmen, and artists. They came by day and by night, invited and uninvited. The path became so well trodden, and there were so many people hanging about some days, that at times I had trouble getting into the house myself. I had to go around the back way because the crowd in front would have held me up. Of course, there were pretty girls. The more the merrier. Pals like Freddie McAvoy, Bud Ernst, Johnny Myers, and Bruce Cabot brought them up. I always liked men about me, roisterers, fun guys, rompers. I went back to my New Guinea days, my times in Australia when I roved with a gang, or always had some one guy to pal out with, to look over the girls, drop in at a saloon, or even just go for a swim. For some kinds of fun, the friendship that 2 men can have or a gang of fellows can have simply can't be beat. It is a different feeling from what you get from being with a woman, and no woman can replace the gambling, sporting, handicapping air that men together can establish. One night, I returned to Mulholland to find the place was more or less peaceful. Nobody seemed to be there. I shouted for Alexandre. There wasn't even any sign of him. I went into my bedroom and saw the most adorable girl twins. One was a blonde, the other a brunette. I stared. In the vague light, it was like seeing double. What a pleasant intoxication. They were half giggling, half scared, and I wondered who in blazes they were, where they came from, how they got in. Alexandre suddenly appeared from behind. "Monsieur, you call?" I turned on him in a fury. "You're damn right. What are those two girls doing here sitting on the edge of my bed? Who let them in? Who are they? And what are you doing? What kind of a house do you think this is, anyway?" I looked at them again, in all their twin beauty. I yelled as I sat on the edge of the bed. "Now look, Alexandre, if you know what's good for you and don't want to be fired, you get one of them out of here."